All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of A Chat with Matt. Today I am joined by Sync Publishing, good looking guy over here, Steve Andrew from Songshop. Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Matt. How are you today?
Oh, as I said earlier, just living the dream as we all are right now.
Living the dream.
Yeah, so why don't you tell the listeners and viewers a bit about yourself and Songshop and what's going on there?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with myself. I got my start in the music scene in Canada in the country music side of things. I was in a independent country band for I guess the last almost 10 years. I've been in that scene now, and we've had a couple songs chart in the top 100 at country radio. We played shows all across the country. We've done a small Western Canadian tour, released an album and a few music videos, stuff like that. We've had a lot of success as an independent band, I'd say, and it's been a lot of fun. And I really fell in love with the business side of music in the process of being in this band, and I always wrote most of the songs for us. And I saw that there was kind of a gap in independent songwriters being able to get their music out to either sync opportunities or commercial opportunities or even pitching to other independent artists. And I kind of started looking for a platform like that because I wanted to A, find songs for my band, and B, pitch my songs. And we're from Saskatoon, which isn't a gigantic city as far as the music industry goes. And I mean, the music scene there is really good for a local scene, but as far as getting out to the world, it's not like Nashville or LA, right, where there's opportunities everywhere. So I wanted to try and find some online community where you could do this sort of thing, and there really wasn't much aside from the usuals that everybody know, and it's all really based on pay to pitch, and there's really no there's it's very limited to what you can do. And I wanted to try to build a community where you could go back and forth with artists and songwriters and kind of have a bunch of things to choose from. So that's kind of what led me to create what Songshop is today. I kind of took it upon myself after finding there was a gap in that area, and I spent a little over a year developing it. And yeah, so we're live and in action today.
No, and that's wonderful. And that's definitely something that I've seen in the industry, kind of that gap as well, because with and licensing, it's very interesting because that's one of the things that the industry kind of has always had the monopoly on in terms of controlling who gets connected to those people. And it's a very small selection of people usually who have the power to do those certain things. And you have to go through a maze of connection to try and figure it out. But for you to create an opportunity for an independent artist to have that platform to expose themselves to other industry, other artists, it's remarkable. So you had the drive to do it. I kind of want to take it back a bit. What made you want to get into country music specifically?
I was born and raised in a town of about 1,000 people, so it was kind of just in my blood growing up. With the old back roads and bush parties were a real part of my life, and country music is kind of all we listen to. So, I mean, I was raised in it, and I really just took a love to it because I just love music. I was, got the start in piano lessons when everybody's mom puts them in piano lessons when they're 10 and they hate it. And then they get older and realize that they really like music. So I kind of went into that side of things. And yeah, so I just country was kind of where I grew up, and I just kind of stayed in that lane.
And are you still actually in the country field as an artist, or are you mostly focusing just on the song shop stuff right now?
I'm really focusing on the song shop stuff right now. When COVID hit, obviously it put a grinding halt to the music scene. And I mean, we had all of our shows canceled. We haven't played as a group in, oh man, must have been 2 years almost by now. So, I mean, it was kind of an interesting transition because I was just getting started with Song Shop and kind of getting into the flow of it, and it was taking up a lot of my time. And then my, I guess, career as an artist, if you want to call it that, was slowly falling away. And then with COVID, it kind of completely went to the wayside, and I had all this time to focus on building this platform all of a sudden. And it very naturally transitioned into being more of the song shop thing than the artist thing. I definitely still want to play shows. I still write songs. I mean, it's part of who you are. So, I mean, it's not something that I'm going to quit doing, but it's definitely on the back burner for now.
And that's the interesting thing with the pandemic and how it affected everyone, because it affected everyone in different ways, especially industry wise. Because after year plus now of seeing how much the industry has changed because of this, we're seeing people pursue different avenues, whether it's converting their business to an online format, starting new businesses, or even possibly like leaving the industry altogether and going towards something more consistent and more pandemic proof, if you will. So
Hmm.
with Songshop, it literally just you were already developing it and you had all of a sudden a massive window of time. So in a way, it's almost like in a weird morbid way. It's like it was meant to be that way. So you had the opportunity
I
to
know.
really put your passions into it.
That's exactly what me and my wife were talking about, like how unfortunate the pandemic may have been or was for lots of people. It really was almost a blessing in disguise for us because I mean, we were playing like 2, 3 shows a week sometimes, and there was no time for me to start and build and market and try to create this online business model that I had in my brain. And so it just allowed so much time for me to think and to work on what I needed to do and to build connections and nurture connections that I had and just kind of learn this whole online business world because I mean aside from doing social media and a little bit of marketing for the band here and there, I had never really dove into the online business world, and it is a beast. Like if I wouldn't have had the time, right, to take all of the courses and read the books and do the things that I had to do, like I don't think that I would be anywhere close to where I am today with it because it's so time consuming and it's a different ball game altogether.
Talk to me about the process of starting a business like this because it is a very niche business, especially from an industry
Hmm.
standard, because that whole side of the industry is a big question mark for a lot of people and a lot of independent artists. So, like,
Hmm.
walk me through the beginning to now of it. And don't be afraid to go into detail. We got time.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess it kind of started as I wanted a way, first of all, to have a way to license songs to artists and for artists to license your songs to record and release as their own, right? Just like a songwriter pitches to whatever, Luke Bryan, whoever you want to pitch to. And you know how lots of artists these days don't write their own stuff. And I noticed, I mean, lots of people don't want to admit this, but there's a lot more artists who are great singers and not great songwriters than the other way around. And I know lots of people don't like to admit that, but that's why there's people that write songs full time for a living and they have their name on 10 number one hits at a time, right? It's the way it goes. And so I wanted there to be a very foolproof way to license music online through a platform because, like you said, the whole licensing and mechanical side and just anything to do with song licensing and royalties is a very gray area for a lot of artists. Um, it can be really confusing if you don't understand it. And so I wanted this process to be super automated. And I kind of had a wireframe in my head of how I wanted this to work. And so I literally just like sketched out a flow chart and some really bad drawings of what I wanted it to look like. and 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 took it to a developer and we kind of walked through the process of how the site would work. And then I went to an entertainment lawyer, the guy who my band had used for years, and I kind of talked to him about this idea and he thought it was awesome. And he said that the way that the online world is these days with, you know, terms and conditions and check boxes and all that stuff, you're always agreeing to legal things. He said there's definitely a way that we can make this all happen online where, you know, somebody purchases a license on a song, the license is automatically generated between the songwriter and the artist. And it kind of spits out a license. You each get a copy of it. And so I really wanted that to be an automated process where it wasn't a bunch of negotiating back and forth with two people who maybe don't really understand what they're negotiating. And so that was a really big part of what I wanted. So that's kind of how it all started, was just with an idea, a bad flow chart, and some bad drawings.
And that's amazing, the fact that you can literally just have just a random flow chart that you just threw together and take it to some people and have it turn into what it is now. What were some of the challenges on in that development process from the early stages to now? Because I imagine, especially working with the entertainment lawyer, I imagine there is a lot of red tape you got to cover and make sure that everything is clear and concise as well as user friendly
Mm-hmm.
for a platform like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenges are probably more for me than maybe for the people I was working with, just because the people I was working with and do work with they're very skilled in their fields and they know exactly what they need to do. So I guess for me it was more deciding what we want to include, what we don't want to include, how we want everything to kind of piece together. One of the challenges, I guess, as far as developing it was being able to have the songwriters kind of upload all of their own material on the front end of the site, and then having the website deal with all of the files and creating a license and spitting it out to somebody else who's licensing your song. So, I mean, getting that all to flow together was, I mean, kind of more difficult maybe for me than necessarily the developers, because they kind of deal with this sort of thing all the time. And then the contracting and licensing, that was more or less just deciding what we wanted to include and what we didn't want to include, just because there's so many different avenues. And then, like, for example, we have like a sales cap on the license before it has to be renegotiated in case somebody licenses a song and it absolutely blows up, right? So we just have things like that were kind of a gray area on what to include and what not to include and where to set limits and thresholds and stuff like that, because we wanted it to be fair for both parties. Because, I mean, take streaming royalties for example. Sure, if you're getting hundreds of thousands of streams a month, you can make a significant amount of money. But until that's happening, do you really want to be taking a chunk of money from somebody who's maybe only making a couple bucks a month? Like, at the end of the day, that's just a logistical nightmare to have to submit a statement for paying somebody 73 cents. Like, it's not really worth the time and effort. And so that's kind of why we put that threshold in there, because if the song does blow up and all of a sudden you are making thousands and thousands of dollars a month off streams, well, then we can renegotiate the license. And that's when maybe something like streaming royalties will kick in to pay back to the songwriter. So there's just a lot of things like that we had to take into consideration, because there's just a lot of unknowns down the road. And like I said, it's not really necessary to address it up front because there might not be any money there to deal with.
Yeah, and that's very smart to do, because it with songs, it really can be a dice roll, and it also depends on the artist, the platform, the timing, the genre. Like, there's so many different variables into having that kind of scenario come into play. So the fact that you and your team have created that threshold, that cap to hit, and then to go to renegotiation, that really saves the ass of the independent artist or whoever it is, because with licensing and everything in that area, it is quite treacherous, I have to say, for some of these artists, because depending on the company, they can get snaked out of X amount of dollars or X amount of percentage based on the back end. So just from my understanding of this, it's literally just you wanted to help the artists, and that's what I think the industry needs more of, because now more than ever there's so many artists that are done or they're on the verge of ending their career, and there's going to be a huge gap in terms of artists, but there's also going to be a group of artists that have used this time to create something new and create something amazing that can be used on this platform. And I truly commend you on the fact that you've spearheaded this kind of project, because I can think of a lot of companies that wish they converted what they do into online business, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this is still that traditional paper to pen, thousands of pages, or just endless paperwork and endless negotiations, and you've
Yes.
created a platform to make it so easy for people. And accessibility in the industry is something that, as you definitely know, the industry has always been quite behind on in terms of updating traditional methods to more modern methods. And that's also why this pandemic's been, it's been bad for the most obvious reasons, but also positive because it's forced the industry, which has a history of falling behind the times based on
Hmm.
technology, different standards, and all that kind of stuff, to now force themselves to reevaluate how can we make this survive now.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you very much for the compliment, first of all. And then, exactly as you said, the whole reason behind this was to build a platform that benefits artists and songwriters and doesn't take all of their money when really there isn't that much on the table in the first place. I mean, we all know this. So, so a platform that lets, I mean, like we don't take, Songshop takes 0% of any money that anybody makes from the songs using Songshop. It all goes 100% to the writers and the artists. And I mean, I am an independent artist and songwriter myself, and so that is exactly why I wanted to create something like this. And as far as keeping up with the times, I totally agree. The music industry seems to always be, in some areas, decades behind where everybody else is, and I think it's almost because they have control, right? With the way things used to be, they have control. They have their hand on everything, and they control every dollar, every cent that goes through, and they can take whatever they want. Whereas maybe something with a newer model actually benefits the creators a little bit more instead of the big businesses. And I mean, I understand that sure you need PR, you need A&R reps, like you need these people. And I mean, a business has to make money at the end of the day, but I also don't think you need to rip off the people who are literally making you the money, because without hit songwriters, you don't have a record label anymore. Like you're done, because there's no songs, there's no cash flow, there's no one to go perform the songs because they're just not there. And so how come it's so difficult for some of these writers to get paid? It's an interesting thing, and that's kind of like you said, a blessing in disguise with the pandemic, is it really forced a lot of areas in the industry to get their act together quickly and kind of shift the way that they were doing things to really catch up with modern technology.
And the other side of it is, it's always been an issue with the big business and big corporates and major record label contracts. Now people are starting to truly see and realize they necessarily don't need the major labels or independent labels, and they can do things 100% themselves because they have platforms like yours to work with. They have different avenues to outsource things. They have the ability to also, huge thing, take this pandemic to learn how to run a business for their band, and not just, because the issue with independent artists, and you definitely know this, it's when you're in that artist mode and you're also trying to run the ship in terms of business and keeping everything on track, it can get overwhelming. It can get very stressful, like
Oh yeah.
on a management side, a booking side, a PR side, every side of it. And without having a team around you, that can be quite difficult. But now artists have had to force themselves to reevaluate and figure out, okay, we can't go do live. What are our options? And that's why artists have now forced themselves. And I think that's made people, it's split the artists into two groups. It's split artists into the ones who evolve and the ones who adapt to the changes, and the ones who are getting these tools that will carry over and put them ahead of the pack when shows are coming back into play, because they have all these new skills and it's a cleaner operation and they've worked everything out more down to a science. And then there's also going to be that other percentage of artists that are following the same path, and just when everything goes back to normal, they'll post on Facebook, okay, my band's on an 8, see you there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's interest. I'm like, right now, this pandemic's been a huge transition period for the industry, and I think the industry's been kind of plateaued a few years prior to this, because everything just kind of felt the same. There wasn't any major changes, but then when this pandemic hit, it changed everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The whole I was once told when I first started with my band that the music industry is 80% business and 20% music. And I think that's probably evolved over the last few years to 90% business and 10% music, because you don't need to be the best singer or write the best songs or have the best production, but if you have a great business model and a business mindset and are able to market yourself properly, you can make a living doing this as an independent artist. You just have to have the tools and know how to run your career like a business is ultimately what you're doing. Because sure, you're a singer or a songwriter or an artist, that's the face, but behind that you're a business. And I think a lot of artists maybe don't realize this, or maybe realize it too late. But I mean, if you have that mindset going in when you start and you take the time to learn what a business plan is and learn what a marketing plan is and how to do all these things, you're going to be miles ahead of the next guy, because lots of people just aren't doing that.
It's also a balancing act because you have to have that definition of not allowing the business to get in the way of the integrity of the art, because at the end of the day the
Mhm.
art is what drives the business. So 1,000% agree, it's that you need that business mind, especially at the beginning, because you have to build yourself up and get to a point where you need to show the people that may potentially want to work with you why you are worth working with. And on the other side of that, keeping the artistic integrity in check and not either conforming yourself away from the authenticity of who you are and maintaining that while having a solid business model. So it's a big fucking mess when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And like you said, a balancing act. There's so much to balance, especially when you're doing the online stuff, you're running the website, you're marketing your shows, you're playing shows, you're writing music, you're in the studio, you're releasing new music. Like, there is 1,000 things you got to try to balance at one time. So being an independent solo artist, especially, like, I don't know how some people do it, because I mean, our group was 5 guys when we first started. We ended up with 3, and it's kind of been the 3 core of us. So we hire everybody else out. But I mean, we had 3 of us to run everything. And I mean, even then, sometimes it was like, oh my God, like I don't got time to do this. Can somebody take care of this? And it was just, I couldn't imagine being a solo indie artist trying to do everything yourself and working a day job and everything else that you have to do just to keep your life going, because there's a lot. It's like, I feel for you. There's a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the drive to do that, because especially when artists come into it, and I was just speaking to an artist the other or yesterday, in fact, a solo artist, and she was talking about just like all the things that like take to be a successful artist, because a lot of these artists don't come in to this knowing exactly what to do. And people like you who are creating these platforms to help the independent artists make the process a bit easier, and also allowing them to learn about a side of the industry that vast majority of them probably have no clue about, because there's not really a manual to deal with the sync and licensing, mechanical royalties, and all that kind of the side of the industry. It's literally, if you don't have the right people around you, you could be missing out on collecting money, you could be missing out on opportunities for placement. And with platforms like yours and people that want to help the independent artist game, and I think we're also going to see a lot more people be honest and real when it comes to the decision they make, because this pandemic's shown a lot of people, and it's definitely shown me, for example, like life can be taken away at any moment. So why are you doing something that you're not happy with? why
Hmm.
why don't you have that aspect of your life? Because yes, I'm in the same boat. Like, you have to have a job, you have to have that income to be able to do the things you want to do. But at some point you need to have at least an aspect of your life where it's something that you want to do, that you're excited to do when you wake up, because life is too short to focus on the things that you're not enjoying.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are waking up to that fact lately too. There's been a lot of people making some pretty drastic changes in their life that I know, me being one of them. Like, there's just life's too short to do something you hate your whole life. I mean, I would rather make half as much money, live where I want to live, do what I want to do every single day, because I will be a much happier person. I'll live a way stress-free life. Like, it'll just be way more enjoyable at the end of the day. And that's kind of, I think, what a lot of people are noticing, is that life's about enjoying the ride a lot more than putting your nose to the grindstone. I mean, I understand that maybe back in the day when, my grandparents came over, their parents came over from Europe, wherever they came from. Yeah, life was probably pretty hard. They had to settle in, they had to, grow their farms, they had to do everything that they had to do. But because of the hard work they put in, they've set a lot of us up to live a vastly different lifestyle, and to, we have all the luxuries that we have today. And so I think that that's a big mindset shift, especially in today's day and age, is to do something that you love, because that's ultimately what's important at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's about following that drive, following that passion, and having that thing that makes you want to get out of the bed in the morning. Because this industry, I've seen it chew so many people up and spit it out, and I'm sure you've seen it as well. And just people get beaten and bruised and give up because insert any sort of reason, whether it be you're not getting to a place where you want to go to, you're not getting this, you're seeing this person do this. And the issue I've had with the industry, especially in the past few years, is people are focusing too much on what other people are doing. They're
Mhm.
focusing on a competition aspect of this
Yep.
industry. And I, at the end of the day, art is art. Because if you are doing something you love and you're having fun with it and you're just being who you are, people connect with that. People are craving that personal connection. People are craving that
Hmm.
authenticity now more than ever, because with everything that's going on in the world right now, there's so many things. It's so much misdirection. It's so much this. But with art, you're able to create and display exactly how you're feeling in a moment. And with that, people can connect with that. They can feel that. They can carry that over, and they have something to think about day by day, as opposed to all the toxicity of everything that's going on around them. And
Hmm.
also tying back in with that, you have to balance it as a business and figure out how it's like one of the biggest conundrums I think of the independent artist. It's that, how can I be authentically myself while at the same time establishing a solid business model that could set me up with a lifelong career?
Hmm. Exactly. And at the same time, stay true to who you are, what you want to portray as your brand, or as your music, as your art. And like you said, the whole comparison thing, like, that's detrimental to people. People think, oh, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. But what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You need to focus on you, because the only person that you need to move forward is yourself. Expectation is the catalyst of disappointment. Don't expect yourself to be anywhere. Just work where you are now. And all of a sudden, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I surpassed that goal 6 months ago, because I wasn't thinking about what I expect. I'm just working at bettering myself, moving myself forward to where I want to be every day, and not comparing to where other people are, because you don't know what the other people are doing. Just because you see a picture and a caption on social media, that doesn't mean anything. You have no idea what they did to get there. You don't know if they paid somebody $10,000 to go open for whoever. Like, like, there's just, that's why you can't compare. I find social media is, it's kind of the devil for that. I'm going to quote a water boy, social media is the devil. It's something that causes people to really compare two unlike things, because it kind of can paint a false perception of reality, and then that's where you can get down on yourself because you're not doing that, you don't have this, and it's just stay true to yourself, stay focused to where you are in your life, and you're going to be a lot happier.
Well, social media is 5%. You're seeing 5%. You're seeing the highlight reel. You're not seeing that 95% of the work. And that's why that's a huge reason why I want to start this podcast, because a big thing that people don't realize, especially other industry people, other musicians, and even people who just are supporters and fans of music, they don't fully grasp the struggle and the journey that it takes to release a song, release an album, do a tour, uh, get to the point where they're opening for someone. Like, there's so much of this industry that many people don't understand, and every artist's journey is so different. And the toxicity of social media is what's killing so many people's drives, because they're seeing everything that one person's doing and they're assuming, oh, everything's just falling into their lap. But you don't know. At the end of the day, you don't
No.
know what it took for that person to get there. You don't know what the person had to sacrifice to get there. And that's a huge thing with this industry, and you know this as well from doing 2-3 shows a week with your band. It's a game of sacrifice, because you have to look at yourself and look at what you're doing and be like, is this something that's worth a sacrifice? And if so, what is it that has to be sacrificed in order for me to maintain the momentum and the drive that I want to do for what I'm pursuing?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that falls to the wayside, and I mean, everybody gets into it because they love it, and you can never lose sight of that. Because I mean, as soon as you lose sight of that, that's when it becomes a lot more like work per se, and the enjoyment kind of falls away. And so you have to remember why you started in the first place. I mean, everybody who is in the music industry obviously has a gigantic passion for it, whether you're a singer, a songwriter, performer, a backup singer, a guitar player, a bass player, it doesn't matter. You are passionate about your craft. And that's obviously the most important thing to keep sight of. And then, yeah, you just have to kind of make that decision. What am I going to let fall to the wayside to try and make this a career, or make maybe not even a career? Maybe you want it to just be a side hobby, a side hustle that you really enjoy doing with a group of friends. And you just have to kind of decide, okay, so am I going to do this on the weekends, or am I going to get that golf membership, or am I going to do this on the weekends, or am I going to go to my son's ball game, right? Like that's a reality for a lot of people. And it's just, yeah, it's like you said, once again, the balancing act between life and your passion.
And a huge thing also is a partnership in that. Like, if the person's in a relationship, I've seen the people who've gone through this industry and tried and make something of themselves go through X amount of relationships because the person doesn't understand that sacrifice that people make, while at the same time trying to maintain a relationship, while trying to maintain the family dynamic, while trying to maintain your work life, while trying to maintain every single
Mm-hmm.
aspect. We're really not selling the industry well here.
Well,
It's
just
really
it's the
hard.
nitty
You're gonna have to make a
it's
lot
the
of sacrifices.
it's the nitty gritty of it, though. I mean, that's maybe what a lot of people don't see, especially if you're getting into it, right? Like when I first kind of got into it, I would see, I'd go see an Eric Church concert or a Jason Aldean concert, and I would just see like, oh, look, Jason Aldean, right? But then, meanwhile, 2 years later, he's getting a divorce because his wife can't handle him being on the road all the time. Like, like that's just the reality of it. And maybe there was a lot more to it than that, obviously. But I mean, that's just an example. And I've seen it too with people I've played with. Their relationship dynamics maybe aren't that great because he or she doesn't really understand, and they're gone on the road all the time playing shows, and they have family at home, and it's just Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate. My wife was super into the whole thing. She came to lots of shows. She was super understanding of it all. And I mean, it was my passion, and she let me follow my passion. And I mean, I think that's where finding your person in that aspect is really important, because I mean, we make sacrifices for each other, and you just have to try to find, once again, that balancing act. That's kind of the theme of this. It seems to be the theme of this whole episode is finding a balancing act between just life in general.
Well, life is so complex because there's so many different things to think about. And that's why also something to tie back to the pandemic, of course, is this pandemic has forced people to reevaluate what is important to them,
Mm-hmm.
because everything stopped. So you could actually take a step back, look at the different aspects of your life, and be like, does this make me happy? If no,
Yeah.
why am I doing it? What are the positives of me doing it? What are the negatives of me doing it? And then you
Mm-hmm.
can go through there and work your way through and have yourself set up. And that's also a big thing as well that a lot of people have worked on, including myself, is that personal development aspect. Because prior to this pandemic, I was, oh, Jesus, I was booking shows for artists, booking tours, managing artists, promoting shows in my local scene, like working a full-time job, maintaining a relationship. Like my life was so strenuous before this. And now, because I've had this opportunity to reevaluate what are the essentials and what I want to do, as well as what are the things that I truly want to do. Because, like, I've always wanted to do a podcast because I love the platform, I love the conversation, I love every aspect of it. And I did a college radio show back in the day when I had time to do it, but I didn't have time to do it post college because life gets in the way. And so the fact that I had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to launch this podcast and start down this avenue of content creation, which is something I've always been fascinated by, but didn't have the time to do. And now I get this aspect where I get to have conversations with people like you and get to learn new things and have a better understanding of the industry from so many different aspects, and also provide a piece of content for people to ingest where they can
Mm-hmm.
possibly learn a thing or two and have a better understanding of what really happens behind the scenes. Because the weird thing with the industry, what I've noticed is a lot of the industry isn't open with what they're doing. And whether that be artists, whether that be labels, whether it be management companies, whether that be anything, because whether they don't want to reveal what they do or how they do it or did it, whatever the reason is. But I think in order for people to truly understand what this industry is, what it takes to survive in it, what it takes to maintain a career, we need to have more conversations like this, because
Mm-hmm.
it's it's not easy. It's not something you can just walk into and a year later you'll have a major record deal, you'll be touring, opening for one of the biggest acts in the world. Like that doesn't happen immediately for a lot of people. It might. It's a small chance, but it might.
Yeah.
But it's the understanding of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because you have such an interesting platform in a side of the industry that not a lot of people know, but I think you were the perfect guest to have this kind of conversation with, because you understand the aspect of the artist as well as you understand the aspect of the business, and you know the struggles of all that. And I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I thank you for taking the time to join me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. And yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. Sure, we maybe have painted some things in not a very great light today, but I mean,
I
some
think
of
we
the
were being
best
honest.
memories, yeah, but some of the best memories and best times, best nights that I have ever had in my life and probably will ever have been playing music on stage with the guys who are now my best friends, playing to, thousands of people, playing, like there's nothing like playing your own music to a gigantic crowd of people and having them just get a reaction out of them, having them cheer back to you, scream back to you when they love your music. And it's just, I mean, it's all worth it, right? At the end of the day, you do it because you love it. And I mean, some of the best memories of my life have been made playing music. So I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's
that
been great.
and that's what it's for. That's what makes it all worth it. It's those moments where you can go on stage and get that reaction, have that engagement with people, as well as have the opportunity to convey a certain feeling in someone, connecting with someone on a more personal level. It's live shows, and music itself is an amazing thing. Like, yes, we
Hmm.
definitely painted a honest picture of what this industry actually is. But the thing is, we wouldn't be in it if we didn't know what it was. And we're pushing and we're all doing this work, whether it be Songshop or a podcast or managing or whatever aspect of the industry you're involved with. We're all here for a reason. And the people who are still standing through all of this and who are going to come on the other side, we are going to be rewarded with, I think, possibly a golden age of the
Hmm.
industry, and in an age where we're so thankful to be at a show. We're so thankful to be with people, experiencing music, producing shows, putting out content. I feel a golden age is coming. I don't know
Hmm.
when, but I feel like it is coming. So
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to end it on more of a positive note. Steve, thank you for taking the time to join me, man. This was a wonderful conversation. Where can people find you and what you do?
You can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group for Songshop. It's facebook.com/group/songshop. And then I also have my website, songshop.ca. You can contact me through the contact us page through there. I'm also on Instagram at songshop.ca. You can send me a direct message. I do all my own social media and stuff like that. So you'll get a hold of me directly.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you for checking out another episode. I'll be back with a new one soon. Take it easy. Peace.